So Nick, we are live now.
Good.
So hello everyone. This week in Jordan B Peterson Study Group, we will be discussing Biblical Series Lecture number 10. So today we have a new member, Nick. Nick, we are happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Okay. So I guess it's only you and me. So we have discussions on Saturday, and today is the session where we summarize all the discussions and make them public. So today's lecture would be Bible series number 10, Abraham, the father of the nations.
Okay.
Yep. So in this lecture, Peterson told us about a very important website called BibleHub.com, BibleHub.com. So this is the website where you can get commentaries on a particular verse of the Bible from all the different people who have commented on it over the course of last God knows how many hundreds of years. So it's very interesting to track what a particular phrase is interpreted as by different people having different meanings. So you should definitely check that out. Okay, so apart from that, one of the interesting things I got from this lecture was some people seem to have this misconception that if they always tell the truth, or at least always try to tell the truth and follow the right path, then somehow things will work out well for them, or they will be rewarded or something. And when those things don't happen, um, they become bitter and they kind of start hating the whole process because hey, I'm doing all these good things, I tell the truth, I try to do the right things, and then why still bad things happen to me? So that certainly can be a cause of a lot of frustration. And this is kind of a big misconception. So just because you are telling the truth and following the right path doesn't mean things will work out for your best. There will be certain situations or societies where those things will work to your own detriment. So if you are doing them thinking that somehow I will be rewarded, or then that is kind of a pathway to a lot of disappointment. So I guess the right way to do this would be to be more realistic about it. And if you're not being realistic about it, you're just operating in your kind of delusion that things will work out for the best when they will not. Uh, Thinking that things may not work out well for you would allow you to kind of prepare for them in advance, and you will not be resentful.
Yeah. I
So, yeah, go ahead, please,
okay.
Nick.
So, what is the format like? Can I just jump in and say my observations, or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think you're right that like Peterson's view is not the naive one, in the sense that um, I guess he would formulate it this way: that given the fact that existence is limited and it has all kinds of limits or downsides, what is the best approach, right? This doesn't mean that the best approach will lead inevitably to good consequences, but that it is the thing, it's your best bet, right? That's what he says, that like to act in a non-cynical way, to aim for the good, right? That's the best bet that you have. So yeah, I agree with you there, and I think that it's not just a matter of uh, manifesting, like this, The Secret. I don't know if you have heard of this book, The Secret. That's this idea that you can wish uh, whatever you like, and then by just wishing it, the universe is going to manifest it to you, or something like that. And that has a very dark implication, which is that if the things that you want don't appear, then it's your fault, right? You haven't wished them strongly enough, or I guess then the one could say that, well, poor people in a poor country, well, it's all their fault, right? They haven't been thinking positive enough. And that's I like Peterson because he's not in that world, right? It's the world of I mean, he's in the business of self-help, right? Of giving advice, but it's not that kind of advice of all shiny. Yeah, just wish well, and everything will be fine. So, and I guess the reason he is able to keep that wisdom is because he focuses on these traditions that were, as he describes, quite dark in a way. They didn't wish away the darkness of reality. So that's my reaction.
Yeah, that reminds me of another thing. So uh, when these people try to present a more like positive and rosy picture of the world, they're actually doing harm, because uh, it's the same thing when you are not able to openly discuss something. Because I happen to have I have tried to have conversations with people on difficult issues, and they just immediately they're like, "Oh no, those things are too dark. We are just not going to talk about them."
Yeah.
And Peterson. After listening to Peterson, I was like, and this is not just Peterson. I attended this meditation class where they said, okay, so if you are alive, you will suffer. There is no way around it. So it is strange when I go out, people seem happy. And I was talking to a friend of mine earlier, and I said, Peterson does have a point, and I think he's right, but I'm not seeing it in the world uh, that I live in, where people just, everyone seems to be like so happy. Uh, it's kind of a deception where when you go out, you are supposed to show everyone that you are happy. There is immense pressure on you to just look
Yeah.
happy. And then people like me get confused because, okay, I'm not that happy. And everyone else seems happy. So I'm like, uh, okay, so I must be crazy.
Wait, okay, but mostly it would be people that you don't know, right? What about like your close family and so on? Is there everyone happy in like among the people that you actually know?
No, not at all.
Yeah, that might be the thing, right? Like, obviously, people that you can judge only from the outside, they will try to put up a kind of a decent, let's say, facade or something. I don't know. It can happen even with people that you know, right? Like Facebook um, has a bit that thing, or Instagram. I don't know. Like people just show their picture with their children or in vacations, and you always think like, why am I so miserable, and everyone else is living a happy life and proceeding. Well, I guess it's because you get only a sample, right? A self-selected sample. And I mean, I've seen it from myself. uh, my way of using Facebook was had a lot to do with, okay, now we are having a really cool moment, so that will make friends envious. So let's take a picture and share it. Like I don't
Okay.
know, we are grilling outside and having a nice time at the lake, and everyone else, I don't know, is working or whatever. Let's share it, right? So, but assume that everyone has this tendency, then well, it's only a place where you can kind of get miserable. I don't know. I stopped using Facebook last summer actually,
Mhm.
because I was every day I was checking it multiple times. You know, when you're addicted, like these people who have a cigarette in their mouth, and while they are smoking it, they're already turning on the next cigarette. You know, like that means you're addicted. And I had this effect with Facebook where I had one tab open and I opened the next tab also with Facebook. You know, like I was opening Facebook while Facebook was on. Uh,
Okay.
that's how strong the automatism was in me. Then I unfollowed everyone for a while, and I saw that I didn't miss it. then I wrote to all the people that I had only contact via Facebook and said, well, do you have WhatsApp or something else? And then I unfriended everyone. I still have the account, but I unfriended basically everyone. So in a sense, maybe this feeling that we are different than the rest can also be fostered by these platforms. I don't know, is that the effect you had, or is it more like really outside in the real world?
Well, I think it's both. You make a very interesting point that uh, it's just that those people that I'm talking about, they're mostly like strangers. So obviously they would try to paint a kind of rosy picture and try to show everyone that hey, we are happy, we are having a great time, and the people that you know closely, yes, they are not always that happy. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I somehow missed that. And as far as the point you make about Facebook is, uh, you are exactly right about that. I mean, even I have felt that everyone else is having such a great experience of life and what I'm doing with my life. It happens many times when I go into for example, some of your friends have gotten job here, someone is at Google and this and that, and you're like, okay, what I am doing with my life. So
Yeah.
that happens.
I think like within the context of Peterson's lessons, the one that is most relevant here, I would say, is this compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not who someone else is today, right? It's exactly that. So try to not look at other people and how happy they are because you don't know the details. So look at, well, how was your situation yesterday or 1 year ago, and like where have you put efforts, and how have they affected your life. That's something that you can control, right? Because then you can see where have your efforts have had a good effect, and then continue in that direction. I don't know.
Yes, this was a point from like his maps of meaning lectures, and in the previous lecture we discussed that uh, if you end up in a difficult situation in life, and so he makes the point that you are going to need your friends, people who really would stand by you. All right, that's okay. So that's, we knew that much. So then he also talks about how if you also figure out that it was you who caused all that, uh, then it's going to be really hard on you. And I can certainly relate to that because he has talked about how if you don't follow your interests, and if you don't do the things that you know you should be doing, then that's okay in the short term, but in the long run things will pile up so much that your life will become kind of unmanageable. And I can totally relate with that, Nick, uh, because uh, some of the issues that I'm having today, I know like 3 years ago, I had this kind of discussion with myself where uh, I knew I was supposed to take care of that. I understood it at a conscious level, but then there is somehow a disconnect between, like we were talking earlier, what you know consciously is right and your behaviors would then default back to the destructive patterns that has always
Yeah.
been. And yeah, um, it's a long journey to
Yeah. It's a skill. It's a skill to learn to. There is this. There is one interview I remember where Peterson explains really well how to actually negotiate with yourself to get yourself to do something. You know, in the sense that we always make the mistake that we think we are our own I don't know, dictators and slaves at the same time. So that if you tell you to do something, you will also do it. But that's not the case often. So you need to find kind of, you need to talk to yourself as if you're like two people, kind of, and but treat each other well. You know, it's like the person who then has to do the thing needs to agree with you, the one who is telling the other part. So in a sense, the way he says it is you should ask yourself, what is it that I actually would do? You know, not only what could I do, what should I do, but like, is there something that I would actually do, to really integrate those parts that are rather lazy and maybe are more likely to say, no, I don't feel like, right? To actually involve them, like this, to invite the demons out to play, right? To say, hey, you don't feel like, but you know that it would be also good for you if you did it. Is there maybe an easier version of that you would do, or is there some way I can reward you that you will do it? And like this kind of gentle approach to yourself. And then also he says it's important that you then actually follow through, that you then, like, let's say you decide, well, okay, I tried yesterday to study 3 hours and I didn't manage. What about today? I try to study 5 minutes and then I reward myself, and that's fine, right? And then this person, this other, like the person who is lazy says, okay, 5 minutes I can do. But then you really have to stop after 5 minutes, because otherwise that person, that part of you will not trust the other, you know? So you do it 5 minutes, and then you reward yourself, so this behavior becomes stronger, and then tomorrow you can say, okay, tomorrow maybe, I guess, depends on how big the struggle is. Again, that's this point of compare yourself to who you were yesterday, right? If yesterday you were able to study 5 minutes every day, maybe this week it's time to try 10 minutes. But if you weren't able to study at all, well, then maybe this week you should try to study 5 minutes at least. And so it's always relative to what you were able to do. And I think that's a mistake that I did many times. Like, for example, okay, from tomorrow morning, I will go jogging every morning. I wake up at 5 and I go jogging for an hour every day, forever, until the end of my life. And I think I took decisions like that many times in my life, and I never managed to go over like 3 days, maybe. You know, like at the beginning, the willpower is strong, but the fact is that you have to use that limited willpower to create a habit, because you cannot go on willpower all the time. So you need to use that limited amount of willpower to create just enough so that it can go on as a habit, and then and build on that, right? Yeah. But I mean, I knew already many of these aspects. I had been reading about psychology for years, but Peterson has a way of boiling it down to the core, to the essence, and to say in one sentence something that has like 7 layers of meaning. That's why I'm a fan of his. Anyway.
Yeah, I think that will be very useful. What you are saying, I can certainly try that out. One question I have is, uh, so this reward, like, what is that reward? Let's just say you just want to browse Facebook uh, the whole day, not the whole day. After, let's just say you come back from work, you just want to browse Facebook, and you are trying
Mm-hmm.
to reduce that because you know it's not good for you, and you are trying to
Mm-hmm.
get some reading in. So you say that, okay, fine, you negotiate with that part of you which wants to browse Facebook all the time, and you say, okay, study for 5 minutes, then you can browse for 10 minutes. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, this reward you are talking about, is it
Mm-hmm.
something, uh, can it be something you are trying to curb at the same time? Or,
Um,
mm,
Good question. It depends on the kind of, I would say, the kind of animal you are interacting with, right? Like what it depends on the context, on the past, on what kind of habits you have evolved over time. So if this, um, it's something that is also a kind of an internal negotiation, right? You have to find something that feels right. if it still feels wrong, there is a part of you that is not agreeing with it, with the deal. So and there might be different parts, so it can be a dialogue. Like you could actually try to really take a piece of paper and start writing it down and say, okay, my decision is, what is my decision for today? And then you write down precisely what you're going to do and what the reward will be. And then maybe there is some part of you that's not agreeing or not happy about it. And then you just allow this part to speak and write down, okay, then maybe you have a dialogue. You think, okay, then I might fix it, right? I make the decision a bit more, I don't know, like larger, because you think I actually can do it, or you can make it smaller, or you can make the reward larger. And that's it. That's then the decision for the day. And you give your best to do it. And you are actually quite likely to succeed because you have integrated all the parts of you. You have not tried to like eliminate the part of you that then manifests later, right? You have really been able to actually believe in your goal. Then you do it, you do the effort, you reward yourself. And if you manage, right, you might actually fail, which, okay, if you fail, then the next day you say, okay, what was the problem, right? Like, was the decision too ambitious? Was the reward too low? You calibrate and you find, again, something that you actually can do. And you try again. When you succeed, you say, okay, well, thank you, right? You thank all of you that collaborated. And you say, okay, is it time to become more ambitious, or is it time to, over the next week, just try to keep this, right? Like make a habit out of it. So I did 5 minutes. Let's try to do 5 minutes again tomorrow and next day and so on. And then maybe next week I do more. And so it's in a sense, there is no right answer for all cases. It's something that you have to feel. The feeling is important because it's really a matter of different parts of you that you are deciding to ignore in different times of the day, basically, right? So if you want to do an integrated decision, you have to allow all of them to speak and to find a kind of an arrangement that fits. And of course, over time, you will become better at it, at taking decisions and at believing in yourself that if you take a decision, you actually do it. And you can build on that, but not build on like, this is how much I should be doing. This is how much everyone else does every day. Everyone works 8 hours. I should be able to work 8 hours on this from tomorrow, right? No, if last week was 0, then you have to start from 0, right? 0 plus X, and then add X over time. So I think this is a mistake that I did a lot, and I'm really, I think I've become quite good at not doing it. Like, for example, if I take a decision, right now I'm quite confident that I can keep it for a while, let's say for a month. But the decision I take is limited in time, so that after the month I can recalibrate and say, okay, it worked well, it didn't work well, and how do I change it? But again, you have to start from where you are. That's, I guess, the basic point.
Wow. Okay, so the thing about that is, wow, that was an interesting point, because I feel like that I certainly do this thing where remember how you have got these uh, different ideologies, and on the very extreme ends of the ideologies, you have people who are not really advocating for any kind of peace. They want to live in a world where the other side does not exist at all. So
Yeah.
I certainly do that with myself, because the disagreements I have with certain parts of myself, I don't want them to exist at all. Like yeah,
Yeah.
you're saying, okay, let's negotiate with these people, and my default pathway seems to be that why are we negotiating with like this part? Like it shouldn't be there to begin with, but then I guess that has been leading to more harm than good. And so kind of be able to integrate everything and let everyone, you know, have
Yeah.
certain uh, kind of say in the matter, because uh, yeah, so that's
Yeah,
and
I mean, I think this is the point of this, like this, what he mentions, this integrating the shadow, right? That there are parts of you who, if you then go to the real core of it, they have dark intentions, right? No, it's not that they want the best possible good for everyone. And there are, I guess, I don't know, maybe my theory of this aspect of the psyche is not developed enough. But I guess there are parts that you can integrate and that you can enter a kind of an alliance with. But I guess that job is never done in the sense, maybe that's the idea of like recognizing that there is maybe a core that actually doesn't want you to succeed or doesn't want the world to succeed. And that part will never give up, right? But it's there, and you have to be aware of it. And it's interesting, right? This observation that people who haven't done that um, will project it to the outside, right? They will see it in other people because they are not aware that it's actually part of them, you know. So if you know that there is a part of you who actually would like, let's say, would like to see the world burn, right? There is that part of you. To be aware of it and to know it's there, right? It's never going to go away, and never going to give up. And you enter into a kind of a dialogue with it, and you put it in its place. And but then knowing that this is a part of you, you allow like the I don't know you enter in a relationship with it that so you basically take advantage of its force and and bend them towards something that's actually productive and useful and meaningful. I don't know. I feel right now that I don't have a good way of articulating this thought, but I guess that's my best attempt right now.
just one doubt I have around this whole concept. So yes, some part of and I guess this is centered around uh, there is a part of you which maybe you like want to hurt others and everything, and I cannot prove it, but from my experience, I can tell that you have to kind of acknowledge it. You have to kind of understand it and try to deal with it rather than try to hide it,
Mm-hmm.
because when you try to hide it, it will just kind of explode, and
Yeah.
you will later on be like, crap, what did I do?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that makes sense. But then the second aspect would be that there's a part of you which is aiming at the worst for yourself, like it wants to see you burn, like uh,
Mm-hmm.
um, and let me put it this way, there might be some part of you which kind of likes to watch pornography,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
so like what if you are convinced that hey, we need to eliminate this part. I guess that is why I'm bringing this up, is because there could be
Yeah.
certain aspects of you that while you are otherwise a reasonable person, you
Yeah.
may not want them to kind of exist, because you know that
Mm-hmm.
it's not a matter of me. For example, let's say you have an alcohol problem,
Yeah.
so you know that you shouldn't go near it, because if you did, then that's it, you're done. Those circuits will
Mm-hmm.
then kind of take over everything.
Yeah.
So in that case, I guess you can't integrate that one, right? You have to kind of eliminate it, or like I cannot exactly say if I studied for 2 hours, I will have a drink if I have that problem.
Aha. I see now. I see now. Okay, I see the problem now. Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I see. There are things that are off limit in a sense, right? That would ruin your life. That you cannot give yourself as a reward because they would ruin your life, right?
Right. Right.
That's what you mean.
Yeah.
Or like the I guess the question is like, could you reward yourself with pornography if, like, if you allow, okay, let's say I study this thing that I should study for an hour, and then I'm going to watch half an hour of pornography, right? That's the
Right.
question.
Right.
uh, it's a good question, and I'm not completely. Oh, maybe let's say like that. I stopped watching pornography um, last summer, and I managed. But the fact is that I have a girlfriend, right? So I can compensate with that. So I don't know if you are single, how, because the question is then you still have a sexual drive, right? And how are you going to live that sexual drive? So maybe this is an interesting thing that you could consider, is to integrate that part of you means to enter a dialogue with it, to say, okay, you still have a sexual drive, right? That you cannot eliminate, right? Well, how are you going to deal with your desires? I don't know. Maybe it's not realistic to say I stop now forever, but I also don't have a girlfriend. And um, so the question is like, how are you going to deal with it? Um, I don't know exactly like what the best possible way could be, but what about you say, um,
Before you go down any further, I just want to remind you.
yeah,
I want you
sorry.
to continue your line of thought because uh, I know that you're headed somewhere interesting. I just want to
Mhm.
kind of uh, give you the input, which I think you might be missing right now. And it's
Yeah,
better to do it now rather than do
yeah.
it 5 minutes later when you have done the thinking, right? So,
Okay, okay.
so let's just say I have this thing, Facebook thing. You might say that addiction to smoking, alcohol, Facebook, porn, whatever, might be similar in a way, uh,
Mm-hmm.
or might be different in another ways, right? So there might be common element in the brain
Yeah,
which causes all this, and then there these addictions might have their individual differences.
yeah.
Uh, so, so I suppose if I have addiction to Facebook or something, I can kind of talk to it, negotiate with it, do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what I was giving you. This is the input I wanted to give you because you said that you can negotiate with it, and
Mm-hmm.
my whole thing with that is that you actually can't negotiate with it because this thing does not exactly have a voice. It just kind of has single mindedness that comes over you, uh, or maybe because I have not developed enough to kind of negotiate with it. But I certainly feel like the level to which I have developed my this thing, cognition and everything, that sexual drive is not something you can kind of bring to table and negotiate with, uh, because it just takes over you. It doesn't want to. It just doesn't listen. So that's,
I see.
yeah.
Maybe you are maybe you are judging it too harshly. Maybe you are under evaluating the possibilities that you have. I'm just, like maybe that part of you or of me has so much of a need, but it's not so much. So it's like it's big and it has high demands, but they are not infinite. Like it doesn't, the sexual drive doesn't take over while you're working, for example, right? It's like there are, it is bounded. So there is hope, let's say. And so maybe right now, because you have some habits that you have built over the years, it is very strong. So you're not used to resist it. So you don't have so much of a negotiation handle, but you have a bit, right? Because in a sense, like you are in control of the rest of the day. Right? Let's say that part of you doesn't want you to stop working and earning money, Well, because if you die, that part of you is going to die too, right? So it has interests in common with you. So you can negotiate on the basis of those interests and say, well, you are my sexual drive. You want good feelings for me. I also want good feelings for me. So let's find a way together that we can have as most good feelings possible as we can have in our life together. Um, but which way do you think would bring us to the highest amount of good feelings possible, right? So speak the language of that part of your brain, right? So that part of your brain would maybe recognize that it has a short-term, imperfect strategy to achieve the most amount of pleasure possible, because right, it's not sustainable. And so you can say, well, if you help me, we might actually be able to become attractive enough to find a partner and then really start having fun, you know. It's like so that's how you negotiate, I guess, with the part of your brain that is more like instinctual. And these are intuitions, right? I'm not claiming to be an expert or anything. It's just the way what comes to mind right now.
So about that, 2 points comes to my mind. So uh, this whole thing about not being able to talk about something, because I feel like I live in a kind of society where you bring up sex, people just run away. There are
Yeah.
times, there are times, it's it's the kind of conversation that people may not feel comfortable having even with their friends. But if you
Mm-hmm.
cannot talk about it, then you also are kind of confused, and you don't have kind of you don't get to solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm glad we are talking about it. So
I'm
that's the
happy.
first step.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the second step would be man. So yes, I mean, you are right. Maybe I have not kind of, what was the term you used about, maybe I have not accepted it or something, because I certainly grew up um, in an environment where it was wrong to kind of think about sex, or
Yeah.
when I was in school, males and females were not allowed to kind of interact with each other. They wouldn't even like sit in the same rows. So women will sit on one side, not
Mm-hmm.
women, I guess girls, and boys will sit on the other side. Uh,
Yeah.
in college, we had a very much integrated environment, but
Mm-hmm.
when I was kind of growing up, when I was a kid, so I certainly was part of culture where these things were considered wrong, like, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe I have not, you know
Yeah.
maybe I still think they are wrong, or maybe I have not come to terms with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, then that is
Yes.
something to think about.
Mm-hmm. I see. I see. Um, I don't know about your culture so much. What I know is that women in general, of course, enjoy sex pretty much. So they would welcome someone who also enjoys sex, right, within the right boundaries and all that stuff. So, in a sense, I cannot imagine any culture who sees sex in itself as something bad, because that culture would have died, right? So there are, each culture has a kind of, because it's such a powerful force, has theorized how to put it into its right place, right boundary. But nowadays, um, since we are all like questioning everything, and all these cultures are mixing, it's harder to, like, in a sense, everyone has to decide for themselves and make mistakes that they wouldn't have made, or because, well, you have to find your way. And so I think that there is a high chance that you, if you are able to set your life straight to find a woman who pretty much would like to have sex with you, and that you, if you are able, I don't know if what the boundary, the cultural boundary there is, but if you're able to talk to her about it, and she's able also to talk to you about it, and about, I know it's not something that like the first day you say, ah, this is my list of fantasies and I want to leave them out, or right now, right? It's more like a thing that you get to know each other, you talk about the experiences you have, and then over time, I mean, you have your whole life, right? You can propose things, you can say, hey, what do you think about that, right? Maybe not within the situation, but you just mention it, and then you just open, like, let's say you get acclimatized, to the cold water, right? Like, and you get used to things, you get more comfortable, and over time you gain experience, and and so in a sense, like, there is a lot of hope for you to find a way to satisfy, to be satisfied in a way that it's not destructive to the rest of your life, right? Because that's the problem right now. Otherwise, you wouldn't feel guilty about it, right? So that's something that is worth conceptualizing and looking forward to, I would say.
Wow, that's interesting. So, yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right about all the multiple levels in at which you're describing. It has changed. Things are so much better in my culture now than they were before. Because when I was growing up, people had problem with love marriages also. A lot of parents. Uh,
Again.
when I was growing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I was a teenager, which would be around 2000s and 2004, 5, around that time. So
Mm-hmm.
people had a problem with their kids doing love marriages.
Yeah.
Love marriage, like the guy and the girl like each other and they want to get married.
Love marriage.
Yeah. uh,
Okay. Okay.
there are people in my family who still uh, don't want their kids to do love marriages.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
So as opposed to arranged marriages,
yeah, yeah,
understand that, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
And now things have changed so much that I would say a lot of people are kind of more liberal these days.
Mm-hmm.
But early it was not used to be like this. And your point about sex is very interesting because I do believe still sex is taboo in my country. Like it's not something. Obviously, there have been, like, I would say, 1,000 times improvements over the past,
Mm-hmm.
but still a lot of improvements needs to be done, and uh, which is kind of surprising and how do I say this? The word hypocrite rings a bell because we have a population which is like 1 billion, more than 1 billion, and so you are having sex. That's why you are having all the children. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
somehow you shouldn't. Somehow it's a
Yeah.
taboo. So yeah,
Yeah, no,
that's
it's
very.
interesting. Yeah. I would say that in the West, um, we s- we still have a very weird relationship to sex. Anyway, right? It's not like we are completely sane with regards to sex, and it is complicated. It's not just like something that you just talk about to friends so easily, or yeah, I don't know. There are levels, and as a society, I don't know. I think the US is a bit crazier in that regard. Um, but of course, they are the ones who create the narratives that then spreads. So in a sense, like whatever is happening there, we are going to have in 10 years. But yeah, if I still think that probably worldwide we still have a lot of healing to do. I guess that's the right thing. it has been a taboo for such a long time, and maybe the taboo has been created for survival reasons, I guess, for some kind of biological past, right? I mean, this whole idea of, well, contraception is changing this, right? But idea that the man cannot know whether the woman, whether the child you have is yours, right? I guess that's the what created the whole taboo around sex, right? Because if you as a man you do not know whether the child is yours, you want your woman to be virgin, and okay, well, how do you ensure that women grew up virgin? You make it a taboo to even talk about this thing, like it becomes the super scary thing. I don't know, like this is my like a bro science interpretation of it. But now with the contraception, we are renegotiating everything and talking about it, which I would say it's a good development, but we have to still find a way for people to actually have children, because otherwise we are going to get extinct. And paradoxically, let's say the cultures who still have these kind of fixed roles for sex and so on will be the ones that dominate again. I don't know. That's kind of my overview, the feeling that I get. But I think it's actually good that we are able slowly to talk about these things and overcome the taboo. And maybe we will find a new equilibrium that is based more on kind of an understanding and acceptance, more like warm kind of equilibrium. I don't know. I'm just speculating.
Yeah, that is also interesting point, because I think a lot of perception, I think at least the world or the Indians have of the West is what they see from the movies. And
Mm-hmm.
in the movies they show like everything is so open, sex is so like open, people are talking about it and stuff. So people get that impression, right? uh, which may not obviously be reflective of how people think.
Yeah, well, I mean, how open is sex? I mean, for example, there are all these problems of harassment, right? I mean, which is like take street harassment, for example, right? I don't think we have clear boundaries defined. It's not very clear. Like, can you talk to someone on the street? Like, can I see a woman that I like and go and talk to her? Is that like, I think even to this little thing, I will get different answers by different people. Some people will say that's already bad. Others will say, why not? But then, okay, well, the next would be like the next step or the next question would be, okay, I'm talking to this person and she seems friendly. Okay, can I touch her on the arm? Like, well, that's again like something that different people, for sure, different cultures will answer differently. But even in the West, people will answer differently, right? I mean, I guess that's some kind of um, maybe in the West it would be even a bit reversed. I don't know if that's the case, but I can imagine that some hardcore feminist would say, no, you have to ask for permission first, right? But then the question is like, you have to ask for permission at every step, and doesn't that like ruin the romance and the feeling? So it seems, let's say, it seems unnatural, and I'm not sure that that's the new equilibrium that we want, where everything is set in a very strict framework of rules, where if you make the mistake, then the other person who got offended or hurt has to or will report to the authority. It sounds like a minefield that is not so much better than a situation where, well, the roles are pretty clear, right? You don't have any intimate contact until you're married, right? So it's like we have to find a solution. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't look like we have reached a very clear equilibrium in the West, even though we are very open. It's not. It's not the debate is not over by 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 a large margin, I would say.
I think some part of it could be the digital culture we have these days, where we are more connected to these gadgets than we are to like real people. Because when I had friends, right, my friend would walk into the class and I would just say, "Hey, which movie did you watch, man? I know you are coming straight back from the theater," and he would be like, "How do you know?" And I'll be like, "Because you are my friend, I know." So, like, there is this thing about humans, where you can implicitly, tell what's going on. uh, I'm not. It's not something supernatural. It just happens when you are kind of connected to like humans like that.
Yeah.
Uh, there are times when my friends would tell me that exactly what I'm going to do in any given situation, uh, and they would be so right. I'm like, "Oh, you are so right. How do you know?" And so they are your friends. They know you, and the reason it applies to sex is because the whole thing about sex is like it is for if you take permission at every level, right? That will obviously ruin the spontaneous experience you are supposed to have, and whatever permission they are talking about, we human beings are perfectly capable of giving that consent without actually saying anything.
Verbally, yeah. Yeah. I should say that's my experience too, right? um, but,
I can say that
and
they say it without having sex.
yeah,
So
yeah. But I don't know. Yeah, it feels. Let's say right now, it feels dangerous to even talk about this. So you see, there is a taboo around this kind of stuff, right? It's not like, let's say I've never signed a contract before having sex, you know. So is like that would be the to make to eliminate the gray area completely. That would be how you do it, right? You sign a contract. But yeah, I don't know. Like, to talk about this sounds somehow dangerous, and it feels dangerous to me. It's like, oh, now I'm going to say something that doesn't fit some some mainstream idea, or like, again, like, it's this idea of saying something that's taboo. So I guess maybe we have different kinds of taboos in different cultures. So maybe in my culture it's taboo to to say, well, there is a gray area, around this whole becoming a couple. um, I don't know. It's hard to say.
that reminds me of that reminds me of this experience. I don't know where I was. I think I brought up this thing. What is this thing called? You are married to someone and you can still rape them.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
what is
yeah,
that thing called?
that's
Marital rape.
additionally, of course. I mean, in a
Uh,
sense, you could even probably not even a contract would be accepted as a explicit final consent, right? Because within the time you sign the contract and the time you're actually having sex, or like 5 minutes into sex, you could still change your mind and not say it, but that could still be somehow non-consensual. I don't know. I'm really, like, this is also a bit. Um, the fact is that I've had basically no discussions in real life about these topics with any real person ever. It's like, now I'm talking to you about this, but all I know about is something like, about articles online that I've read, and they are always kind of angry or polarizing, and this kind of stuff. So I come into this already with a feeling of wood, like I need to take a position, and I need to be careful what I say, which is, again, like, it's because it's in these times, right? It's one discussion that we are having at all levels of society. But in my private life, right, I'm kind of settled, right? I don't I have my girlfriend. I have a good relationship with her, like, and I don't have to um, deal with it, with all this aspect so much. So I also don't want to come in with, like a pre-made opinion, without then without having all the information, let's say. So all I know is things that I heard and that people shared without me actually getting to the bottom of it. I guess that's why I'm not able to have a strong opinion about these arguments.
I think your point about you not having this conversation in the real life uh, is very interesting because you kind of I have seen that a lot recently in the West, where not just the West. I'm sure this is something that is part of maybe every culture, but mostly I listen to the news from the West, so I'm kind of skewed that way. So there are some topics that you just can't discuss, and that is just exactly. For example, I'll give you an example from when I was in college. So I used to like Hitler, right? I used to love Hitler, and I had no idea why. Like
Okay.
yeah, like I cannot now tell you why. Like I don't know, he was cool or something. So I was once sitting in a bus, right? And it was the bus which took us from college to where we lived. So it had all these students in it, and there was one particular student that I knew, and he was a really nice guy, really cool, open-minded human being. So I was just sitting there, and we were just talking, and I told him, "Hey, man, I like Hitler. I think he was great." So he did not yell at me, he did not scream, or he did not say, he did not attack me. He did not react, he did not say anything. He was so cool, and he said, "Okay, Sumit, I don't know, I don't remember what he said, just trying to recall it to the approximation, right?" So he kind of pointed me to certain videos where it showed the pain and the suffering that Jews went through and what he had done. And I went home and I analyzed them. And I'm not sure if that had an immediate impact, or over time I changed. But I believe, over time I was like, okay, you know, now I know that he was wrong. Now I know what he did. So, so
Yeah.
sometimes people are coming from a place, that they themselves don't fully understand. And
Yeah.
uh, if because I certainly did not know that I know now. Please understand this. Today I
Yeah.
know you
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
supposed to bring up Hitler and say, "Oh man, I like this guy, he's great." You are not supposed to say anything good about him. Today I know that. Back then
Yeah.
I didn't, so I brought it up. So if rather than you know if he had, rather than being open about it, being kind and telling me, "Hey, Sumiti, you may want to check that out," if rather than doing that, he had just censored me, he had just kind of looked down upon me and started
Yeah.
accusing me or calling me names, uh, I'm not sure of how I would react. I guess I would go underground, like it would not necessarily change my mind or change my opinion. And I think this thing is so dangerous when you cannot talk about things, because it's the
Yeah.
same thing Peterson says, like, I can be wrong. I can be wrong, and if I cannot talk about it, I was fortunate that I did not know you shouldn't talk about that. uh, and it's different in the my country than it is in the West. In my country you can talk about Hitler, like people don't we don't
Okay.
have that reaction to him that people in the maybe Europe does. Uh,
Yeah.
but still, I mean, I can certainly see, and I had this friend, whenever he came around, I was like, man, I'm so happy that you are here. And he's like, why? And I tell him, I feel like I'm home whenever you are here, because I can talk about anything I like. I can say
Hmm.
anything, and I am not crazy when you are around.
Yeah.
So you feel like home, you feel like home when you are there. Uh,
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm wondering, I mean, this basically what you're talking about is the power of people to change their mind, right? Which is something that you don't see online, but it happens, right? I mean, I've changed my mind about things in the past. It never feels like I'm going to change my mind soon because I have my opinions, right? And how does it feel like having an opinion, right? You feel like you're right. But then sometimes someone brings you to the limit of your knowledge, and then you see something new, and maybe at the beginning you don't want to see it, and then maybe over a sleepless night you have to concede that, well, things are different, or maybe it's just a matter also of the feeling changes, and suddenly you accept it more. Um, and so I agree that if you're not able to speak what your opinion, to say your opinion, well, there is no way you can actually change it, right? And my question is, yeah, how to deal with this in this world, right? Because one could say, okay, the internet presents you with a huge opportunity to actually learn and change your mind, and be confronted with so many arguments. But it also has a downside, which is, I guess, okay, if you have certain controversial opinions, it's it's hard to go really public about them, right? Maybe that's not something you want to do if you're not 100% convinced that what you're doing is like, I don't know, I guess there is a risk involved, right? But let's say that you're not ready to do that, but you still want to evolve, right? So you need a conversation with someone. And I'm not sure that the internet really provides the best platform for it, because you end up talking, or more writing with some anonymous people, and if they don't agree with you, they might be mean to you or troll you, or I don't know. It's maybe it's just, maybe I'm just too old to have enough faith in the platform. So who knows, maybe I'm wrong. So and people are having good conversations online like the one we're having now all the time, and changing their mind all the time. But I think it has to do, I mean, the fact that we are having a good conversation has also to do with the realness of it, right? It's not just writing. It's like we are really talking to each other, and uh, well, I've seen you before, so at least there is the personal aspect. I don't know. I've on my channel, I started last week having conversations with people. So everyone who feels like is invited to have a conversation with me, and I just published one of them, and this guy is called John the Barbarian. He's he has Mongolian origins, lives in Germany, and we were talking about where do you get your values from, and I think he managed actually to push me to the limit, to the boundaries of my knowledge at a certain point. I of course didn't admit it right there and then, or maybe didn't really acknowledge it completely um, consciously, but it stayed with me, right? And now I think I have a better comeback to it, right? So I didn't give up my original opinion, but at least it's more developed. So there has been a progress there. So maybe yes, we really should acknowledge that conversations can have power, the power they have. Maybe we should really, actually, that's the intuition I'm having right now. A more evolved society would be able to distinguish more clearly between a conversation where, or like statements of people made to reason about things, and really, like, the ultimate statements kind of thing, like the this is my position, I'm going to fight for it. I don't know, maybe that's even wrong, and we should just well, I guess, like this kind of statement is the statement where I'm going to go political about it. I'm going to become an activist because I believe so much in this, right? And I think that should be subjected to a different kind of standard, right? One is, I have this opinion, convince me otherwise, right? Like, even though it's a controversial position, it should be possible to discuss this kind of stuff. But then the other is, okay, like I'm really convinced about this kind of thing, Holocaust, something like that, and I'm going to act to make it happen again, and that kind of stuff, right? And that there is a difference. Maybe it's the difference between action and words. That might be it. I don't know. It's just there is this question, right? Like, when is it okay for someone to lose a reputation, right? Is it enough to have a controversial opinion, or like what's the boundary there? And I think we haven't found the right answer to that. I don't know.
The thing about that is there is a kind of different type of categories. For example, if someone was, for example, running for public office, right? And he started saying stuff like he believes that one race is superior, or we should have the Holocaust or something like that, then that would certainly disqualify him immediately, as far as I am concerned, because your views are not compatible with the office that for which you are running, so you are immediately disqualified. And you should be, yeah, go ahead,
you
please.
mean from the moment on you say I don't believe in democracy and we should demolish democracy, that's the time from which you are not fit for office?
Kind of, yes. Or if you start saying women are some kind of despicable creatures and they shouldn't have the rights, so that yes, so to me that's just you are kind of telling everyone what your bias is and what kind of laying out what you would be doing once you get the power. So so I think there is that aspect. But then people who have the public office, sometimes they end up bringing up very important points. People just don't want to listen, and then they go after them. So that's wrong. So there isn't like so the points I made up right now are pretty extreme points. Like if someone has that position, then most of us can agree. But then I guess in West, if these days you started saying that there are differences in women, um, biological differences, right? That's why they chose certain careers. So if one guy got fired from Google, right? And if some elected official said it, I guess that person could face serious consequences. I don't know. So right. So I don't think that's right. But I only brought it up in terms of categories. So this was one category, but the second category is private citizen. That's a totally different ballpark. So I am, as a private citizen, as long as I'm not killing anyone, I'm not accountable to. By killing, I mean like not doing some activity that is really hurting others. And me having an opinion doesn't hurt others. So this whole idea that everybody should just surround me and kind of look down upon me just because I have a particular opinion, right? So that just I think a lot of this has to do with the inability to differentiate the human being from the opinion they are having. And what I mean by that is this, I believe it is Carol Dweck who has done this research on a fixed mindset versus kind of growth mindset. And fixed mindset would be something that your intelligence, right, your capabilities, they are kind of fixed. So you are either good at maths or you are not. And so if you are not, then you just get depressed and you don't try. So people who have growth mindset would be like, okay, if I put in more efforts, I'll be better. So
that would be the thing. Sorry that I interrupt you.
So I think this kind of thinking, this fixed mindset thinking, certainly unconsciously is at the center of when people attack you for having an opinion, because what they're saying is, hey Nick, today you think this, and because you think this, you are a despicable human being, you are a racist, you are a sexist, you are this thing or whatever, because you
Yeah.
have this opinion. So those two things are fixed,
Mm-hmm,
but they are
mm-hmm.
not fixed at all. You, in the growth mindset, you would say you are a human being who right
Yeah.
now is having this particular thought and opinion, and it can be changed over time. So I'm not sure
Yeah.
if so those people, this is kind of the this thing, epitome of fixed mindset. uh,
Mm-hmm.
there's a difference between you, Nick, as an individual, having individual rights, having in this thing, this Peterson brings up this individual, what is that, every individual, even a criminal, has a intrinsic worth. So
Mm-hmm.
that is
Mm-hmm.
separate from the opinions you are holding, which can change over
Yeah.
time. uh, and I think, because if you were having a controversial opinion, and if I was
Mm-hmm.
so confident that you are wrong, and if I think people are just not, like, educated enough so that they can have intelligent conversations. Because if I could have that conversation with you about it, if I can change your mind about it, if I'm confident, then I no longer have to call you a racist, is it?
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
because
That's
yeah,
that's. It's. I mean, to call someone a racist, it's what the question is: in what context would you do that, right? I guess the whole aim of doing this is to it's a political move, right? Like you want to remove the credibility of someone. Like let's say we are having a discussion, right? And you say something racist. Like if I call you racist, what does it help, right? Is what's the outcome of that? Like the only reason I would say it to accuse you is if you don't know um, that you are a racist. Like that, I don't know if that's even possible. But in general, I would say that to do that, to call someone racist, is a political move. It's it's to show other people that you disagree with the behavior of the person. It's it's some kind of, in a sense, a tribal thing, right? Like you cast that person out, like to make you make that person part of the out group. um, so in a sense it's a complete different domain than this domain of the conversation that we are talking about, right? The domain where people change their minds, and one might actually say that the domain where there is actual progress. I don't know. It's always this. For me, politics has always been kind of a pain point. I I feel like to be able to make an actual political statement, I would have to read everything that's related to it, and that's basically a never-ending thing. And so I'm quite useless as a political person, in that sense. So I guess I will have to continue to be a private citizen from that point of view, at least until I've read at least 500 more books than I have read now. Um, but still, like this is what it's weird because the YouTube or the internet allows you to have a private public life in a sense, right? Because what you're having in a sense is as if it were a private conversation, but it's public, right? So it's this paradoxical thing where everything I'm saying is kind of in the guise of talking to you and trying to update our minds and being better at articulating things, knowing that we might articulate things wrongly. Uh, and of course, we are getting around controversial stuff because that's what is interesting. But at the same time, this is recorded, it's live, it's going to be on YouTube. well, forever and ever. So it's a very weird thing, and I think it's a kind of a new thing. I'm not sure whether, like Greeks in the agora, like talking to each other. Maybe that was something similar. So in a sense, if we are reliving the agora, revivifying that, then it's a good thing, right? So I don't know, just random thoughts, I would say.
Yeah, one of the interesting things is that the reason I got so turned off, not no, this is not the reason. This is like me post rationalizing something that has happened, and I'm just trying to explain it. So, but a part of the thing I find so interesting about this Peterson, Sam Harris, and Joe Rogan, all these other people is,
Yeah.
for example, he had this person Lance Armstrong, right? Joe Rogan had, and they were talking about the scandal and the way like he cheated and the whole thing. They were talking about like human stock. But
Yeah.
if you go in the media,
I'm
they are
going to
just
turn on my lights.
okay.
You can go on. I hear you.
Uh, so media these days seems to have become kind of a like a boxing match of a some kind. uh, People are just kind of one side would say one thing and then another person would start saying some kind of punchline or some sort of explosive statement. So it is so like gotten so annoying. But when you listen to people like Peterson, they just very calmly they express their points, and they are discussing all these controversial things, and no one is really like yelling at each other. So I really like that. Now, for
Yeah.
example, you as a Swedish person, or
Swish,
let's just say,
Swiss.
sorry, Swiss person, or let's just say you were from UK and you said, "Hey, we people are superior than everyone else." So, if you said that, uh, I would feel so good if we could actually talk about it. You know, like I want to be part of a world where somebody can say this and we can talk about it. Like, okay, you think you are superior. Let's talk about it. Let's
Yeah.
discuss this. Why do you think you are superior? Uh, and why do you think other people are inferior? And to
Yeah.
me, there is such a thing called a superior race. If I'm not sure if I can use the word race because that's not like scientifically true, because all of the humans are just one race, because all of them can breed with each other, right? So that's, I believe that's the definition of a race. uh,
I don't know. Wait, for dogs? No, that would be a species, no?
right, that would be a species.
But I don't know.
No, you're right, that I
Um,
was confusing species with something else. So yes, that would be
yeah.
species. But then how would you define race? I never really thought about it.
I actually don't know. I remember in high school, our biology teacher taught us that race doesn't apply to humans because there is more variability within, like across races, across what people call races, than within. Um, and so he said like that's we should talk about ethnicities. Recently, I heard a statement by someone, one of those speakers. I don't know, Sam Harris, Joe. I don't know, someone saying that it's a bit more complex than that. But I don't know. And that, again, like this is one of those controversial topics that I guess it would ruin your life more than talking about food. But food for me is the same kind of thing, or maybe climate change, or all these topics where diet. I meant like where the public is kind of, and gender also fits into that, but the public discussion has become completely detached from the science. And maybe even the science, or let's say the public doesn't believe the science because there are political interests at play. And so there is no way, we are kind of stuck in, there's no way to update the common knowledge because well, I don't trust this, the studies you cite, and you don't trust the studies I cite. And well, that's the end of the conversation, right? Because science is what's supposed to bring the knowledge into being. And yeah, I think there are these 5 topics or so where we are kind of stuck. And so I would like to just, well, if you ask me about this topic of race, I would like to just be able to say, well, the science says this, but I'm actually not sure um, how the situation is there. I don't know, because simply because, not because I have looked into it or anything, just because the subject itself is so charged that I don't know whether research can progress in that area. I really just don't know.
Yeah, which is strange because you are just confusing people like crazy. You are not actually. Let me put it this way: since this whole issue is so politically charged, like you said, uh,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes increasingly unlikely that we will ever be able to get to the truth. Because somebody might say that, hey, look at all the Nobel Prizes won by the Jews.
Mm-hmm.
So we are better than everyone else. We are superior.
Yeah.
Somebody might say that, and I would like that. I would like to talk about that. Uh, s- uh, right. So I would like to dissect that. Like, why is it that they are winning so many Nobel Prizes, and why not uh, other people? Is it something to do with their DNA, right, or
Mm-hmm.
is it to do with something else? Is
Yeah.
it can you attribute that to their culture or something else? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So you never get to the truth that way.
I have the feeling that this is really something that one has to do on their own. At least if you're, let's say, I'm now answering from a self-interested perspective, I guess. You know, like I wouldn't dare state an opinion and then discuss it publicly before I have like read everything there is to read about it, you know, like to be able to quote the research itself, right?
Right.
Um, but on the other hand, if that's the attitude that everyone has, no matter what controversial topic, the day someone is at the in the position where he should research it or he's interested in researching that, and he needs grants or he needs someone to give him the opportunity, the lab or whatever. Um, then, if the rest of the society is not willing to have that conversation, then it won't happen. So I don't know that if that's the complete answer to say, well, find it out on your own, right? I don't know.
Right. Because people
It's a
men, yeah. Sorry, go ahead, please.
I'm just realizing, right? This is my first hangout that I'm joining, and we are like going through all these bam, 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 all these topics. It's quite heavy.
Right.
I
Okay.
mean, not that it's not interesting, but whoa, okay, that's a way to start.
Yeah. So I will move on to the uh, did I have a point? I had 2 points. I was forgot about them. Uh,
It's okay.
yeah, so I'll move on to the no. I remember them now. Okay, so here is the thing. Yes, you are exactly right. You should read all the research and everything. Uh, but uh, some of you people, and by you people I mean people like you. Let's make a category of people like Nick, and let's just say there are 1,000 people like this, and
Okay.
there could be more, but just throwing out a number. So some of you would have to speak out, uh, speak up, because you will be reading your research and doing all that stuff, and still having your day job and your other responsibilities, while these people who are so kind of violently, uh, not violently, kind of uh, people who have these aggressive speech patterns, right? They would just take over everything, right? And so
Yeah.
some people need to kind of push back, even though they they are not 100% sure. So that's one point.
Mhm.
The second, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like in a sense, what gives hope is the fact that right now it's possible for people to become independent through this I don't know, Patreon and this funding, right? Sam Harris now lives on donations, so he can, right, really double down and go deep into what he really believes in, right? I mean, he has a certain, he doesn't need support from whatever the institutions but then there is the risk, which is these these bubbles that are forming, right? Like let's say Sam Harris is blind to something, I don't know, like to an update. Like he has a very opinion that he is not willing to change, but it actually should be changed. We are following him and supporting him, and then he just doubles down on his opinions, and we don't have a way to get updates on that opinion. So in a sense, it's good that there are people like these contrarians and so on that are able to just state their opinion without fear of losing their job. But then again, these support groups have the risk of becoming these bubbles, and you don't get out of your bubble. And that's actually something that's has been bothering me a lot. You know, that we have these bubbles, and it's really hard to get out of them emotionally, right? I mean, I really feel it. You know, there is an article that comes my way, and already from the title you can see, okay, it belongs to the other narrative. You know, like the narrative where Jordan Peterson is bad, is evil, and you know, and so it's like, do I read it now and like face the pain, right? Or do I not? And each time you don't do it, your worldview or your world becomes smaller and smaller. It's the same that happens with any phobia, right? Like, so I have this scheme that, like, there is this mountain where I wrote an article about it. So like on top is the discussion worth having. It's the one that's closest to the truth. But then there are the two sides of the argument, right? And each time you are, wherever you are on this mountain, there are people who are below you and people who are above you. And people who are above you are the ones that are closer to the other side, right? So they have maybe some more nuanced view, and they have some arguments that you don't find comfortable. But then the ones below you, they confirm what you like, and they um, they make it super easy and simple, and so you can, or the other way around, like you have someone who disagrees with you, who is, if he is low, means they actually have a very stupid argument for what they believe in. And if they are higher and closer to the truth, they have an argument that actually makes you uncomfortable, right? That you think, oh, I don't actually have an answer to that. I don't know if I want to engage. Oh, I would have to read stuff, you know? Um, but it's easier to go down the mountain, right? The gravity is towards the bottom. But then the more you go down, the more you get to just insults, name calling, and so on. And then at the end of it, there is this precipice, and below there is the pit of violence, right? Like, so the dialogue worth having is uphill. It's hard, right? If someone writes an article that you disagree with, you could find the place that is easiest to answer because that's obviously wrong, and you just comment on that. But then maybe there is another argument that is more nuanced, and you should actually focus on that, but it's harder. So it's it's lonely at the top, but the top is the discussion worth having.
I think part of it is about credibility also. Uh, for example, I don't trust most of these news networks and these news media and these newspapers. So if they write an article that is anti Jordan Peterson, for example, I'm probably not going to pay any attention to it because I know they publish so much garbage that I have it just they have no credibility with me. Like uh, it wouldn't fly with me. I wouldn't even want to read it. And there are times when I try to read it, but to me it comes off as so much like opinionated to begin with. uh, I'm like, whatever. But if somebody like Steve Pinker or Sam Harris, right, one of these people wrote an article which kind of disputes what Jordan Peterson is saying, then I would certainly listen to it, and I would certainly try to read it, because I know that Sam Harris is like most likely not trying to politically go after Peterson. He's like genuinely
Yeah.
intellectually processing what he's doing. So there is that aspect also, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's I think that Sam Harris has certainly the most potential to criticize Peterson in a relevant way, in a way that he might find challenging and might actually allow him to update his view and so on. I think that most people don't like the first discussion they had, right, about truth, but I actually think is that, yeah, it's one of the most important interviews out there right now because it's at the nexus between two worldviews. And through that thin interview, this bridge has been. It's actually a bridge between this world of atheism and this world of, well, the Peterson, which is itself a bridge between something more secular and something more religious, right? And so I think it's quite important because I actually learned about Peterson through that interview and through the following one, and I think it's still one of the most relevant challenges and kind of unaddressed, semi-unaddressed challenges, right? Even Peterson says that that's at the limits of his understanding or knowledge, and so, well, I don't know. That's where the discussion has to go in part. So I'm happy that they will meet again in June. I think they will meet in June, even 2 times. So I hope that. I think Sam Harris, that's what he said. Like he thinks that Peterson has an overall positive impact, but there are some things that he thinks are rather not good. So I hope that he's right, and Peterson might be able to hear it and update his approach, right? So I'm really looking forward to that.
It would be the third podcast, right, in the June between Sam and Peterson.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they will meet. It's not just the podcast, right? They will really just go in a location, as like Sam Harris is touring right now,
Ah, okay, okay.
and having guests on stage, and I think that's what they are going to do in June.
That
So
is so cool, man. That is so cool because in the second, and yeah, you are exactly right. I mean, when I don't know, even both, I listened to the second episode after the first one, where they both of them were pretty upset about the outcome of the first one. They didn't get anywhere, and I was like, maybe you shouldn't be that upset. Maybe it was a great thing. And there were
yeah.
many times in the second interview where Peterson didn't have. I felt like Peterson was not able to kind of come up with a kind of a convincing answer to what he was saying. That was so fun because
Yeah.
somebody needs to. You're right. There are these bubbles and stuff, and somebody needs to kind of question these people. That is exactly right. Like point out their blind spots and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. There is another article that, let's say, the most satisfying critical article about Peterson I ever read is called "The Detraction of Jordan Peterson." It's interesting because it's the second in a series, written by a guy who has a very interesting approach. Like, I feel like giving a shout out to them. I hope I will have an interview. I invited them to have an interview on my channel. It's a meta-modernist movement. So okay, this postmodernist stuff is really something that's beyond my knowledge. Okay, so for me, Peterson has always had like two sides of him, right? One is the psychological, philosophical aspect that I find very interesting, and then there is this more critical, political kind of thing, right, where he criticized postmodernism and so on. And that's the side where I really, as I said, I have the feeling I would have to read about all this stuff, right? So I don't know if his criticism of postmodernism is fair, and so that's the kind of stuff. But I don't know if you're aware that there is this meta-modernist movement that kind of came out of postmodernism, which is like a kind of a saying, okay, we accept all the things but about postmodernism, but we actually also accept that we need a narrative, right? So in a sense, like this is my complete speculation of what it actually means. I'm not really sure, but I guess it's a kind of an ironic view, because like irony is built into it. It's the idea that, yeah, well, we cannot believe in any narrative, but since we need a narrative anyway, let's just use a narrative. So let's build a narrative on purpose, self-consciously, ironically, and and there are some really interesting videos. You should find it. Like it's called. There is a channel that I made. It's called the Abstract Core Philosophy, and it's amazing to me that they have only like 40 subscribers, because it's done so, like it's done professionally. It's like a series of advertisements for like to sculpt your body by thinking. And it's super ironic. I almost cannot explain. It has like a super high level of irony behind it. Like every word is a pun, and it has a double meaning. And the interesting thing about it is that what they say is actually true, and it is funny because it is true. So it's again like this metamodernism. I don't know much about it, and that's why I would like to interview them.
What's the
But
channel? What's the channel name?
the channel is actually, it's called the Abstract Core Philosophy. But they have a kind of a symbol between the abs and the tract. So try maybe with ab space tract.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you find it.
I found them.
Okay, yeah. Check it out. I don't know. It's really, it's not for everyone, but I found it so cool. And really, like, do you see how many subscribers they have?
Yeah, I see that they have 35 subscribers.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like really, they deserve more. I'm not sure, because I don't know whether postmodernism was right. I also don't know whether metamodernism makes any sense. But I find it very fascinating, and it could kind of, I don't know, it could be a new way to look at the world. And a friend of mine likes them a lot.
Are these people meta-modernist? These abstract philosophy guys? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And they have a they also have a website, and they write blog posts on Medium, and they have a couple of articles about Peterson. And the cool thing is that, right, they have one article that agrees with Peterson, and one article that disagrees with Peterson. And that's actually the cool thing, right? These metamodernists, they have they are fine with not having completely coherent worldviews. That's so weird. Again, it's very ironic, the whole thing. So for them, it's like, okay, yes, Peterson is very good, but then yes, there are also things that are not good. And so I felt that this criticism, this detraction of Jordan Peterson was very benevolent. It's like, yes, we like what you're doing, but here there are these things, like in a sense of kind of constructive criticism also. So I hope that more people read that. I didn't expect I would be doing like promoting them, but yeah, well, that's what I ended up doing.
That article was from Brent Cooper, right?
Could be.
It's detraction of. It's the same abstract.org guy. Okay, I'll find a way to read it.
Okay.
I wanted to take the point you made about facing the beliefs that are kind of opposite of you, and what happens around that. So yeah.
No, what's the question? I didn't understand the question.
I wanted to take your point about this pyramid thing, where there are people above you who might say things that disagree with you, and they might, you might then stop listening to them.
Maybe if you want, you can also see the article or link to it. It's called "The Way We Act in the War of Ideas." Let me see if it appears high. Yeah, yeah. I mean, at least my Google shows it at the top. It's a Medium article. The way how we act in the war of ideas. Sorry.
That is by you only. That's good.
That's there. The schema appears there. It's a little image of a mountain with kind of conversations how they evolve.
Ah, okay, like that. So this relates to this lecture as well, the Bible 10 lecture.
I don't think so. No,
Uh,
it's just because since we were talking about this conversation about how to conduct ourselves in this, right? If you engage with things that are easy to engage with, it's counterproductive. I don't
no,
know
what
if.
I'm saying is you brought this point up, and it's interesting that uh, it kind of can go back to the Bible 10 lecture as well, because
Okay, I didn't know. No. Yeah.
we kind of went on a tangent for a while. So uh,
Yeah.
eventually, after a couple of hours, we find our way back to the lecture because somebody says something which is related to the lecture again.
I see, I
So
see.
it happens.
Yeah.
So
Okay, maybe
for
for context, I should also say that I haven't watched that lecture since last August, and I also wasn't there yesterday when you had the discussion. So, in a sense, I just joined because it's the first time, and I wanted to see how these discussions go. And I'm having fun, but I guess we are not really following the format.
actually, we are following the format because
Okay.
because we do go off on tangents.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, it. I wish other people had joined. So um, I have been really kind of asking this question to myself, because whenever I would be having not like ideological fights, just any kind of arguments uh, about things where people oppose me, I would get angry. My heart rate would go up, and I would be worried about it for for next couple of hours. And I was like, all of these symptoms like I'm feeling, they're almost as if like I am fighting some kind of predator or something, right? So I'm like, my survival is not at stake here. Like those people just disagree with me, but I am reacting as if like I'm in a death match or something.
Yeah.
And my body is, so why is this happening to me? I
Yeah,
was so
there.
like
There is this comic, this XKCD, you know it probably, right?
yeah,
XKCD.
yeah.
Yeah, this the one where there is the wife calling him and he says, "No, no, wait, I cannot come. There is someone wrong on the internet." You know,
Okay.
it's like something important.
So, and Peterson talks about, and Peterson brought this up in this lecture. So, death associated with you learning that you are wrong. Uh, so, what you learn is in the proportion to the willingness of the sacrifice you are willing to make, and that sacrifice is of your own part of yourself. So,
Yeah.
the part of you, or the part of your psychology which kind of identifies with those ideas, when they are questioned, that part certainly kind of feels like dying, because to that part of your
Yeah.
identity, change is dying. And you will not be able to learn if you are not willing to die over and over again. And
Yeah.
since he used the word dying, I could certainly relate. Like, man, I certainly felt like I'm in a kind of death match with someone. Uh, so uh, and so yeah, that was so interesting of a point he made, because
Yeah.
I remember when I was first surrounded by these kind of more modern ideas. uh, I felt like I'm in a war zone
Yeah.
when I had moved to a metro city. So uh, I felt like I'm kind of surrounded by the hostile environment, even though no one was like trying to punch me in the face or something. So, and now I no longer feel that way, uh, because that part of me is definitely like dead.
Yeah.
The one who, so it kind of died, and kind of updated, and in that process it died. So I can certainly see that.
Okay. Uh, okay, let's talk about this, but then I should probably go. I mean, we have had a long conversation.
Yeah.
Um, this aspect is affecting me a lot recently. This thing that you can make a sacrifice, and it feels like a part of you is dying, and it's for the better. That's something pretty real in this time of my life. Um, I don't want to go into details because I mean it's private stuff, but it definitely feels like something real to me right now, and I think I wouldn't have understood it as much. I don't know, half a year ago. I I feel like I haven't done too many sacrifices in my life. I don't know, maybe it's not true, but like this conscious decision, I give up on all this potential in my future, right? Like there's in a sense, yeah, there is so much potential in front of me, and I'm going to let all that die. And I think that, yeah, this taking a decision and letting all the parts that of you that would have been specialized or ready to take on the other path is no longer needed, right? And it has to, well, like, I don't know what happens to those areas of the brain. Assume that you have hesitated to do something for a year, right? So you have had a long dialogue back and forth, and then the time you say, okay, it's going to be painful either way, I'm going to take this decision, that part that has been communicating with you all the time, it has to die, right? Because it has no longer a function. And I wonder what happens to those areas of the brain, because they really don't are not needed anymore. So maybe there really is some kind of dissolution of certain neural areas, and maybe it is really some kind of mini death.
Okay, I see that you have to go.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So, okay.
Okay.
So I'll just
Like,
summarize
okay,
the
sorry.
points.
It's just a question.
Hmm.
Like normally, how long are these discussions? Because I just decided it on based on my feeling that okay, I'm kind of tired and it has been long enough. But I don't know. Should I have like booked a certain amount of time, or what's the idea?
Okay, so the way it works is the discussions can go for a very long time, like they can go for 8 hours sometimes.
Ah,
uh,
okay.
the discussions that we're having like yesterday, but today's is kind of can be 1 hour, 2 hour, or 4 hours. And if I am
Okay.
alone, it will only be for 10 minutes because I
Yeah.
get very
You
really
just say
nervous.
your thing and that's it.
Yeah, yeah, and but nobody like questions it or stuff like that. But it also works on a kind of individual level where some people would come in, they would okay, the way we usually do it is like we ask around all the people who joined as to, hey, what was the most important thing that you got from this lecture. Then that
Yeah.
person would talk about it, then we would give our inputs, and after that that person can stay if they have time, or if they want to drop out. So people drop out as per their comfort levels of how much time they have.
Yeah.
uh,
Okay.
yeah. So there is no expectation from you that you should stay for 1 hour or 2 hours. uh,
Okay.
it's just that we cannot be mandating that, like people
Yeah, no,
should
I
be having
understand.
their comfort zones, right?
Yeah, I would say that for me, I mean, this has been a very nice discussion, and I guess if you want, because I haven't watched the lecture, maybe if you want to wrap up and say like what was good for you about the lecture, that's good for me.
Okay, so yeah, so I'll try to kind of wrap up quickly, the way I usually do it. Okay, so yeah, so Peterson has talked about this a lot. So not doing things that you know you shouldn't do. So that we pretty much know. Uh, in this lecture, he also talked about doing things you want to do. Uh, so how many times we don't do it? Like we want to go to the gym, we don't, right? We should study for 2 hours, but we don't. So he talks about the one thing that might motivate you is figure out the cost of not doing something. I was watching this movie earlier about the raid on Osama bin Laden, and some kind of uh, one person who works for a one department of the government was talking to another person who works for the president, and like they are not like still sure whether or not the president would give the order to go or not, and this other guy certainly wanted him to. So before that president's the person who worked for the president leaves, this guy tells him, in this business, how do you decide the cost of not doing something? And what he meant by that was, let's just say that the president says, so we are not going in, and Osama bin Laden is there. So that's like a huge cost. I mean, you would lose the guy. So this is exactly the same thing, that you should do something, but there is a cost associated with not doing it. Uh, so, and yeah, that really can be a motivator, that where you don't want to end up in life. Uh, Apart from that, he in this lecture he also talked about humanities and the arts, and economic utility of the beauty. Not just economic utility, also in terms of how much it can inspire others, right? So he was talking about how Europe is beautiful and all the tourists want to go there and look at the whole thing, and when you look at it you are so inspired. And I kind of see that because I have seen pictures from Europe, and they just wow, they just look great. I mean, they are like, wow, man, cool. I mean, they were not
Well, you
just
have
building.
some pretty
Yeah.
also awesome places in India too.
uh,
One should say that.
yeah, I guess we have to, yes.
That's for sure. I mean, we've been in India actually with my girlfriend. We've been
Ah.
to, I mean, we've been to. Wait, the typical triangle that people do, Agra, Jaipur, Delhi,
Uh-huh.
and then Mumbai for a wedding.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So yeah, it was cool. It's
Oh,
nice.
great, cool. Hey, let me know if you are coming here next time.
Okay, which area are you in?
I'm in Pune, Maharashtra, so it's the same state as Mumbai.
Ah, okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like 3 hours from Mumbai. But if
Yeah,
you
we
are
have
coming somewhere
some friends.
else, if you are coming somewhere else and not coming this side, just let me know.
Okay,
I can come.
cool.
I would love to
Thank
see
you.
you. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you. Well, and if you come to Switzerland, of course you're invited. We have a
Okay.
couch that
Okay.
becomes a bed. So you can
Right.
sleep here.
So that was great. And yes, yes, he makes this point again and again. For example, that article you wrote, um, uh, Nick, I mean, you have the ability to write things and express yourself, and that's like a kind of a weapon, kind of a power you have. People keep saying,
Yeah.
I don't have any power. But if you know how to communicate properly, then that's a great power. Communication and arguing and making your point and convincing others. So he talks about that in this lecture as well, and that is what university is supposed to teach you, according to him. And I've been like, and this is something I realized after, because when I was in this thing school or college, English teacher would come and she would talk about grammar and sentence construction and stuff like that, and I'll be like, what kind of BS is this? I'm a science student. uh, right. That was really ignorant of me, but whatever, I did it. So then I go get into private sector and I have to write all these emails. And over time, I kind of in the tech industry, if you write like average, like you're better than most people, because people just uh, at least from what I've seen in my country, they just uh, are not that how do I say this, let's just say they don't write like the academicians or the journalists. They just want to communicate the point. So if you learn to write slightly better than everyone else, you're like, wow, good. So but still I was seeing that somebody was telling me that he had learned how to write the emails properly, and after that, that really helped me in his career. And he didn't have to like spend a great deal of time on it either, like, you know you just have to do slightly better than other folks. And that was such a powerful weapon, and that's when I realized, like, you are in these meetings, you have to kind of make your points, you are dealing with customers, you have to talk to them, convince them. And I was like, man, I know what I want to say, I know how I want to convince them, but I don't have the particular sentences and words for it. I was like, boy, it is such a power. uh,
Yeah.
Peterson is exactly right about that. I mean, if university didn't teach you anything but these three things: read, think, and communicate critically, those three, four things, right? If they taught you that, but then all you have to do is, kind of find a job somewhere where you don't have kind of how do I say this, where you have meritocracy. Let me put it this way, and
Yeah.
I can see how you would just progress uh, like crazy.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. It's interesting because this is one of the things that motivated me the most about Peterson. This idea that, hey, learn to read, learn to write. It's going to make you more powerful than anything else. And I guess a kind of a part of me that is more like power seeking and wants success was very like, oh, okay, I can do that. It's like I had already finished with my studies of computer science, but I felt like, okay, this is something that I should look closer at. And since he has not um, since he's not done with his online university, I kind of started programming my own little platform. um, and I'm happy that some people joined, and we have our own reading list, and we are reading the books and writing about them and speaking about them. That's actually how I started the channel. So I'm taking that kind of advice very, very seriously, and it's continuing. I've read many of the books that you read, but more in the guise of like, then instead of, I didn't really know, or I was not following the study groups really, but I was doing it on my own. Like I was just reading the books, then writing an article about it, and talking about it, and so it's like it's an ongoing journey, and I really feel like it's slowly leading me to interesting places. But it's an exciting journey. You still there?
oh, pardon me, I forgot to unmute myself. So uh, so how about I finish the last two three points, and you can tell people where to find you.
Okay.
Mhm. That would be great.
Yeah.
And can we have 5 minutes chat on meeting link uh, after, because I want to get
Uh-huh.
some details from you that you probably will not be willing to share in public.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I'm able to kind of reach you.
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
hope I find the link again because I closed it. But yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Right. And humanities and the arts. Yes, we are done. Road to alignment. Ah, this was such an interesting. Uh, Peterson talks about these things that we have all kind of experience, and he just kind of, like you said, articulates them. So many a times, in life, you are in a situation that is not good, and you want to get out, and you stay there, stay there, stay there, and until what one day you say, man, I'm getting out of this situation, whether it's a bad relationship, job, or something else, and you get out, and you find something better or something like that. And but it's actually, but then that thing to which you went after escaping, after a couple of months, you're like, Did I make a mistake uh, in living? And it is such a trick. So the point there is, in the road to enlightenment, you will encounter things that you are scared of first. So he gives the example of Moses or something. They are escaping tyranny, but they end up in this desert, and a lot of them must be saying, "Hey man, the tyranny was better." so,
Mhm.
it is, yes, it applies so much to life that once you escape something that was truly bad, you end up in a situation that is kind of even in worse, and you have to kind of uh, persist, and then things get better. And after that, you are like, oh, I'm glad I had the courage to escape that. But in between this deep, it's like a sine wave. This bottom part of the sine wave, you have to
Mhm.
you have to really suffer through it, man. And you do kind of question yourself. You do second guess yourself that maybe I shouldn't have escaped. And then when you say that you're coming from a place of weakness, right? Yeah, that has happened to me so many times. So there was that. And his another point in this lecture was, and this has been I and this I believe I try to apply in the personal relationships, where you don't try to impose things on the other person. If you see, if your friends and you can come up with kind of a consensus and understanding of the things, and that's for the best. So the point is, if you compete between tyranny and a system that is equilibrated, the equilibrated system would win. uh,
Mhm.
and this kind of I have on a personal level seen that, I've dealt with the tyranny. My dad used to be very kind of strict, uh, and uh, that is why I kind of it is strange how much impact like your parents can have on you politically, because uh, I certainly wanted to be part of a more equilibrated system, right, where every individual can decide for himself or herself. And in a way, tyranny is good because it protects you from making stupid decisions on your own. You are kind of constrained in that. But in other ways, it kind of it's not good, because you do want more freedom. You do want to be independent. So uh, I could relate to this, that if you create a system where people voluntarily are engaging in certain actions, as opposed to in a system where they are forced to, uh, the equilibrated system would be, or volunteer based system would be, I think, outperform the other system. And that was the last point in the lecture.
Ah, okay. Good.
It was
And did
not
you
the
watch?
last point in the lecture, just clarifying, it was the last point in my notes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Cool. So you're watching this for the first time, right? Like, so you're waiting until the day, basically. You're waiting until you can discuss about them. Do I get that right?
Okay, so normally, since I have a day job, and sometimes things get crazy, normally I try to watch them on Friday night, and the discussion happens on Saturday morning, my time.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, as I told you, like before we started the video, I started in February watching basically everything he put out, and so that these lectures have been, yeah, watched half a year ago. So
Mhm.
I don't remember everything of them.
Yeah, I believe some of them I have listened to on his podcast before,
Mhm.
but what happens is, when you watch them, right, he has all these slides,
Yeah.
and we kind of stop him in between and we take notes, because otherwise what happens is, the thing about Peterson is he can make 50 points in that 2 hour,
Yeah,
30
yeah.
minutes something. So, and when it is done, you kind of really don't remember, unless you make notes. I certainly don't. So we find it useful to kind of make these notes and then have the discussion.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, then has been
You
very
want to tell
interesting.
people about your channel and stuff?
Okay, let's say, I mean, the starting point is Sorters Club. So sorters, like you would expect, like sort yourself out. So sorters.club. That was basically the platform I started building half a year ago to, I guess, scratch my own itch, right? I thought like, if I want to read, write, and talk about all these things in public, then I want to have a place where I can share this kind of stuff and possibly have discussions. And so I started programming this platform. It's open source and free. And then over time, I added features, right? I said, like, why not add all the kind of things that one person who would like to sort himself out would do? So I added, like, like you can write your own goals, you can say if you achieve them, and people can comment and congratulate you, like that. Trying slowly to create a small community of people. And I guess there are maybe like 3 4 people who are using it regularly, not more. But subscribe. So we have like, I guess, something like 300 subscribers over time. And let's say that's one thing that I'm doing additionally to the actual reading and writing and so on. And also that then there is my YouTube channel. That's kind of what came as a consequence when I said I'm going to talk about these books that I'm reading. But then since I felt quite awkward about the way I was speaking and so on, because like it takes me 2 months to to get done with a book and writing and so on. So I never could get used to my own voice and my own accent, and then it felt so weird. So in December, I took a 31-day speaking challenge, which kind of changed my complete approach with YouTube. So I said, okay, from now on, it was close to the end of December. I said, like, for 31 days, I will speak to the camera, like to the phone, just casually, without even preparing, for 5 minutes at least, and just upload it. Just talk. As Peterson mentions it, like, as authentically as possible. So like, this feeling that you have to follow, like, the more authentic you are, the more aligned it makes you feel and grounded. And so it was an exercise in doing that. And over that, I found more, like, confidence and courage, and even some friends. So it was like, other people started the challenge, and other people are actually still doing it since they started after me, of this speaking. It started like a little movement, and we were like having kind of parallel discussions, right? I would say something 5 minutes, and then the next day, the 5 minutes of the next guy would be an answer to me. And it was quite exciting. So it made me think about, like, the potential of YouTube. And basically that's this new phase. Since the challenge is over, I said, okay, I'm going to start having conversations with people. And so I started a new playlist called the Fireside Chat, and I'm inviting everyone I can. Really, like, if you want to have a conversation, just subscribe. Like, there is this Calendly. There is a link below the announcement video where you can just go and pick a date and a time, and we can have a conversation on YouTube. So it's like, basically, before I wanted to overcome my fear of speaking at all, and now I'm okay. Like, next step is to have conversations, and that's why I reached out to you guys, and I said, like, okay, let's have a conversation with you people and see how it feels, how your situation is. Like, again, not with an agenda to like get you all on my channel, but like just to see what can come out of this, right? Because in a sense, like, we all have a common interest. I've just been going about it in a slightly different way. So I guess, yeah, I mean, my channel, I don't know, maybe you can link to my channel because it's a complicated URL, and Sorters Club. That's Sorry if it took me
Wow.
so long to talk about myself.
Wow. You have a new subscriber on your website, by the way. I just signed up,
Cool. Happy to know
and
that.
that is a remarkable idea, dude. This 5 minute idea. I mean, wow.
It
Uh,
really changed my approach. I feel much more confident about all this stuff. Yeah. That one of the most significant changes was that when I started, my idea was I have to get better at speaking, and that thing happened, but it's by far not the most significant thing. I would say the most significant thing is that right over time I started to feel okay. Like I'm already able to speak. I just need to speak. That feeling of like, yeah, it's okay. I can just speak even though English is not my mother tongue, right? That feeling of like, yeah, you can just do it. And again, like this general lesson that the more you if you stay at the comfort zone, right, at this order and at this edge between order and chaos, then your world expands, and so
mhm.
the opportunities expand, and yeah, you can ride that wave maybe your whole life. I don't know.
Just one thing. This 5 minute thing, you can do it. You don't need a kind of a fancy channel for this, right? You can just do it on your own normal YouTube account.
Yeah, that's what I did. Yeah, exactly.
Ah,
Like
okay.
I just, really, because I have a kind of a more nice setup with microphone and camera, which belongs to my girlfriend and so on. And that's what I was worried about at the beginning, right? Like I need the best lighting, I need the best audio, I need everything perfect. But then I would speak and I would feel nervous. And instead, I said, okay, let's change the game completely. And the only thing I need to do is speak, like 5 minutes, don't care. And also, that was important. You don't prepare, you just go in and speak. And I had a couple of videos where I didn't know what to speak about. And then for 5 minutes, I was just speaking about that, like, oh, I don't know what I should say. And I guess this is the thought that is coming up in my mind. Like 5 minutes of that feels quite painful. And the interesting thing is that the reactions were always the best to those kind of things. They saying, "Yeah, we saw the real Nick," or like it was good, it was human, it was personal. And then you suddenly think like, "Yeah, why do I need to put up this professional front or try to make something perfect if like this raw thing is having more engagement?" So it's quite cool. And now again, these conversations I want to do in the same guise, right? It's just come and have a conversation with me. I don't care what topics, and we see what happens with that. It's just an exploration. So I don't know. It's all kind of coming out of this Peterson, yeah, was inspired me to, I guess, double down on my interest in psychology another time. But yeah, that's another story.
Wow. I'm so happy you showed up because I wow. Yeah. Okay. So we'll chat
Okay,
for
maybe something.
yeah.
Since you are so welcoming, like you're giving me the confidence to say this, I'm going to start a coaching education.
Hmm.
Because I'm a computer scientist, right? But from next month, I'm going to start a coaching education, and I want to become a coach so that I can also apply this knowledge because I've been interested in psychology for years. But instead of being like the computer scientist with interest in psychology, I would like to be a coach with superpowers in a sense, like who can then program to help people. So in a sense, that's also something that I'm going to be documenting on my channel, and maybe these conversations over time could also become some kind of training, coaching conversations. Like if people are willing to be guinea pigs, you know, or or maybe even privately, but like so that I can collect um, training uh, time. That would be super cool if people are interested. But I feel that I have been self promoting a bit too much. So thank you again for
What would the person need to do if they want to uh, what's the, like what is the process for that? I mean, how would some this coaching happen?
okay. I the way I see it is this. over the next year and a half, the whole I will have this whole education. Like first stage in half a year, I will be done, and then more. So I guess the more and more I'm educated, the more formal the process will become. And so for now, it would just be these public conversations or private. That's also a possibility. But then I think I have to kind of find out a good balance, for me, like some kind of compensation that's not as much as it would be if you have like a fully professional coach. But it's like if you're willing to have a public conversation, then it's good for me and for you, right? And if it's a coaching training in private, then okay, maybe I have to find out a kind of a price that is fine, like because I do have some background in psychology. It's not like I'm just completely beginner in this area. So let's say that it's funny because I didn't plan for this, right, to come out in this conversation. So I haven't set the parameters right. So let's say that if people are interested, I would like to hear from you, and then maybe we can find a solution that works for
Yeah,
all of
cool.
us. And I would say that in half a year, I will have more experience, and then it will be more like a professional service that I can offer. Anyway, thank you for your interest, right? I really didn't expect now to be able to talk about this stuff. So.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. Can I catch up with you for 5 minutes on meeting?
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
all right.
Then
All right.
thank you for having me, and
Yeah.
see you next time.
All right.
Bye.
Same here. Same here.
Mm-hmm.